Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and welcome to Everything Co-op. You know, it's a great day, and it's a great day because we have a new person to the Community Purchasing Alliance, Miss Amy Abbott. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Vernon.
And how are you this morning?
I am doing splendidly, and yourself?
Great, really great. And how long have you been with Community Purchasing Alliance?
I have been working with the Community Purchasing Alliance since last August, and actually started out doing some part-time work and was hired full-time in November.
Okay. Well, maybe that's because I hadn't heard from you before, because it's relatively new. You're relatively new to the
That's
city.
right.
Okay. So I think I want to start off by asking you a little bit about the history of Community Purchasing Alliance and what do you all do there?
Sure. When talking to people, I'm trying to explain first what a co-op is and what I do there. You know, I have to ask for some patience as I tell the story. It started in 2011 when a group of churches in Washington, D.C. Were really struggling after the recession. Some of the donations were down, and one even commented that they paid more on their electricity bill than they did for their pastor's salary. And so it came about this first group purchase of electricity with 12 churches, and they ended up saving $100,000 on their utility bills.
I got to go back. I got to make sure that I understand what you said, that this one church was paying more for electricity than they were paying their pastor.
That is right.
Okay, so we got to do something about this. I got it. All right.
So we got to do something about it. And when that first group purchase happened, and these 12 congregations realized the power that they had together that they would not have had alone, they thought, we might have something here. Like, what other areas could we try this out? And that was the birth of the Community Purchasing Alliance. We sort of formally became a co-op in 2014 with one staff person, and we essentially listened to our member owners. So our members in the D.C. metro region are schools, houses of worship, and nonprofits. And they're the ones that tell us what their pain points are, what they're struggling with. And so we have developed these programs by listening to their needs. And so we now do group purchasing around waste hauling.
Before you go there,
service. Yep.
Before you go there, Amy, you're moving quickly on me, and I want to go back to it. So one church looked up paying more money for electricity than they were paying for their pastor and said, we got to do something about it. So then 12 churches got together. So they started talking, and they found out that they could talk together. 12 people could talk better to the utility, Pepco or whomever else it was, than any one church could. And so by
by bundling their utilities together, they were much more attractive to a third-party supplier that could offer them a much better rate than Pepco.
Oh, so they didn't even go to Pepco. They went to a whole third party. Okay. All right. And then who was that one employee that they started with? Was that Felipe?
That's Felipe Witcher. Yep. The founder of the Community Purchasing Alliance.
Okay. So they started with Felipe, one person. And how many people do you have there working now?
So now there are 5 of us. And so
1 to 5 in 5 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So,
and Vernon, and we're excited to be on your show today because we want to grow even further. So later I'd love to talk about the opportunities we have here at CPA.
Okay. We'll do that. I'll make a note. We're going to talk about growth and opportunities. So you got one employee, 12 churches, and you talked about a co-op, and you formed a co-op in 2014. So I want to go back to this co-op to make sure people understand what a co-op is. Our regular listeners will know, but just in case there's a few people that have come on that don't know a co-op, can you explain what a co-op is?
Sure. So the co-op is owned by our members. So the synagogue, the mosque, the charter school, the nonprofit, they are actually members and owners of the co-op. They direct the co-op, and they also receive benefits through the form of dividends that they get at the end of the year. And I think when we were, incorporating, there were a couple of different business models, and the co-op was one that was considered, and we thought that it most aligned with the social purpose of what our members wanted, and also is aligned with the economic and environmental justice that CPA seeks. And so we are now 75 member owners in the DC region who do group purchasing through the Community Purchasing Alliance and then receive dividends at the end of the year. They also direct our board of directors, and they set the strategic planning for our organization.
Okay. So they looked at in the beginning, that was before you came on board. You've only been there not quite a year yet. So before you came on, there were some folks, 12 churches, and maybe Felipe by then, and they were looking at what to do. Somebody decided co-op. And I want to get the mission. You said it fit the social purpose of the members. What is that purpose of the co-op, that social purpose?
Thank you for asking. Well, so what's really important to our members is worker equity, environmental sustainability, job creation, and racial equity. And to that end, 60% of our profits as a co-op, we actually reinvest in community organizing in the DC metro region.
60% of what? 60% of?
60% of our profits as a co-op go to community organizing, and then 40% are returned to the members in the form of dividends.
Who would decide to give away 60% of their profit?
Institutions that care about their community and are interested in building power to change their communities for the better.
60% of what you make goes to community organizing.
That's right.
And you talked about worker equity, environmental something, and two more
sustainability.
Things. Some environmental sustainability. And the two other things, it's something about
job creation.
Job creation, okay.
Yeah, we're part of this sort of new economy movement where we are interested in creating new vehicles for wealth generation for people who may not have had access to it in the past. And to that end, also racial equity was the fourth thing that I mentioned.
Okay, so you are a company formed out of need, out of this.
Yes.
We're paying a lot of money for electricity. And so out of this concern, these 12 houses of worship, I like the way you said that because I normally would say churches, but houses of worship formed together and went to another electric supplier besides Pepco and got their rates a lot lower. And by working together as a group, 12 of them buying a lot more electricity than any one, then they have more negotiating power to get to drive the price down.
That's right.
That's kind of it?
Yes.
And then those 12 came together, and now you're up to 75. But somewhere in that 5 years, probably in the beginning, you talked about social purpose of what you then call Community Purchasing Alliance, worker equity, environmental sustainability, job creation, and racial equity. Y'all sound crazy, man. I mean, you're supposed to get together and make money so y'all can get more money. I mean, what are you talking about? You want racial equity. You want to build wealth. Yeah. And I started to say, when you said build wealth, I started to say, Amy, well, that's what most businesses are for building wealth. And then you said to people that normally don't get wealth.
That's right.
Okay.
We truly believe that we can do both, Vernon. We believe that we can build a wealth-generating vehicle while also making sure that, that we are including people who are normally left off. Like when you create a business, it's usually the owner that profits, because they're the ones taking the risk. So it makes sense that they get the reward. We imagine a world that both workers and owners are able to benefit and share in the risk and reward. And our organizations care about strengthening community institutions. And that means caring about the people who live in the community.
Well, I don't know if you know it, but what I heard in you talking about this was the 7 principles and the values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and that's giving away 60% of what you make, and caring for one another. And that's all this racial equity and worker equity and job creation. That's all about caring for people, caring for folks.
That's right.
All right. Well, you've only been in this less than a year, and you got a real grasp of why. How did you, or what's your background that would cause you to be into a co-op? Have you been working for co-ops before, or what's the background that would draw you to this kind of a company?
Well, Vernon, before CPA, I was a community organizer. So I feel like I already had this, sense of, I'll share a quick story of, I was working in nonprofit for many years. And my last position, I was running a facility for homeless women and children in Prince William County, Virginia. And I knew that our program was helping the 12 families that were living there. And it was a wonderful program, very supportive, beautiful ministry. But we would get hundreds of phone calls from people that we couldn't help. And it was around this time that I met a community organizer, and he said to me, Amy, the work that you're doing is so important, and we are called to do it. We have to do it, that we have to pull people who are drowning out of the river. He said, but eventually we have to go upstream and figure out who's throwing them in the first place.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. How do I do that? And so he talked to me about community organizing, about changing things systemically. And so, I spent 4 years as a community organizer in Northern Virginia.
Amy,
working.
Hold 1 second. We are going to have to take our first break, and I really want to come back and talk about this 12 families, homeless, and hundreds of people calling you can't help them. And you want to pull people out of the river of despair. I'm going to go back and get that quote. Okay. And then who's throwing them in the river? We'll be right back. We're going to take our first break. Please don't touch that dial.
DC's News Talk, 1450 AM WOS and 95.9 FM.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks, and we have Amy Abbott on the line with us this morning. She's the director of the Community Purchasing Alliance in the Washington metropolitan area. And we were talking about her working at a homeless shelter for families, and she could work with 12 families, but she had hundreds of people working with her. And Amy, I want to tell you a quote of a lady that was on the show. She was the president of the International Cooperative Alliance, and that is a huge organization. Her name is Dame Pauline Green. She said that co-ops brings people out of poverty with dignity. And I think that's what you were talking about. And I want to get this quote because I want to quote you online from here on out. You want to pull people out of the river? What did you say? So
in the short term, we're called to pull people who are drowning out of the river. It's the right thing to do. We have to help people here and now who need us. But eventually, we also have to go upstream and figure out who's throwing them in the river in the first place.
See, what I like about that in a whole lot of different ways is that too often our society, and I would want to say the 1%ers, but somebody will say that those people in poverty is because of their own laziness, ineptness, blah, 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 blah. It's their fault that they're in poverty. And I have had it, and the more I learn, it's more like what your friend was telling you. Is somebody's throwing them in the river and then keep them in the river. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we use the analogy often about a moving walkway, like when you're at the airport and there's this moving walkway, right? And you don't think about it, you just hop on and it just takes you. It just moves you from point A to point B. Well, that walkway is our current system. It's the current racist system that has denied people the ability to prosper and generate wealth for generations. And so it's not enough to just say, well, I'm not, I didn't build the moving walkway. I'm just standing here. Well, you're moving on it. You're benefiting from it. You could turn around and walk against it. That's really hard to do. We actually think, let's just, smash that. We're going to build our own walkway.
So the current economic system walkway, if you will, the current way that things happen in our capitalistic society is some people are on the walkway. And they go from station to station, and it's almost like they put their hand out and they get wealth from station to station that they go, and eventually they end up on the plane of wealth, of richness, and this inequality that we are seeing happen bigger and bigger, not only in the U.S. but around the world. Is that these people are on these stations and they capture all of this money, but if you're not on it, it's almost impossible to get on it. And it seems like to me, Amy, and you have been in this, I'm only looking at it, I've not studied it, but it seems like those people that are not on the walkway, the folks that are on the walkway are always taken from them. They don't want them to get on the walkway because the more people on the walkway may cause it to slow down or they won't get as much. Okay? And so the people that are not on the walkway, they don't get the education or they don't get the opportunities, and then the folks that are on it can, put their finger out and say that, you haven't done something right and you haven't done this right, but they're always taken from, always getting more of, and they don't want them to get on the walkway because then they have to share it, and they're concerned that they may take over.
Vernon, I think people in power are afraid because they think if I give you some power, I have less power, right? But the thing about it is, what I believe in this collective power is that no, if we actually share power, it does more good for everyone. And, and I've seen that, but I also know that in the world that we currently live in, you have to build power. It's not going to be given to you out of some altruistic desire, right? But I do want to say about that moving walkway and shifting it, just this past year, I wanted to bring up our impact statement from 2018. So
you're talking about Community Purchasing Alliance impact statement.
Yep.
Okay, go for it. Let's
and
go.
We facilitated procurement and group purchasing on behalf of 110 houses of worship, nonprofits, and schools on nearly $17 million in annual contracts. And we helped them save more than $1.5 million on those contracts. But more importantly to us, we shifted 57% or $9.6 million of contract spending to women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And we want to continue that trend.
Okay. So when you talk about shifting that business, you're taking it from perhaps majority-owned, that's white males mostly, to women-owned and minority-owned businesses, or those also businesses that pay a living wage.
That's right. So that's actually really important to our members. When we do bidding, we ask, questions like, what is the average pay for the lowest paid employee? What is your turnover rate? Questions that really lead us to understand how they treat their workers. And we have, organizations that don't go with the lowest bid. They want to know and they care about these things. They know that if the workers are being paid fairly, not only is that the right thing, but they're going to be better employees.
And better employees mean that they do better quality work and you get better quality service from them. And it all sort of circles that's win, 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 even though you may pay more, but you would get better over longer term. And okay.
I think our co-op helps these organizations lean into the values that they have. So whether it's a school or a house of worship or a nonprofit, this is one area that maybe, they don't have a procurement director in some of these areas. And so CPA helps them by vetting vendors and helping them lean into their values. And, it's also local businesses. We have people that really would prefer the money go to and stay in their community. And so even if a local business is more expensive than a national company, we have members that choose to go with that local business.
So in your bidding, in your procurement process, money, how much you pay is only one of the variables. And
That's
it's
right.
probably not the most important, as I hear you talk.
Yeah, that's right.
And who decides all of this?
The members.
Okay. So just real quick, everybody out there, co-ops are businesses that are owned and controlled. Well, the type of co-op depends on who owns and controls that particular business. So just real quickly, there are basically four major types. And that's if the company is owned and controlled by the employees, it's called a worker cooperative. If it's owned and controlled by the people that uses the products or services, it's called a consumer cooperative. It can be owned and controlled. It's a purchasing co-op where they purchase things for the members. And those members could be other businesses or it could be individuals. A lot of times there are businesses that come together to buy things in bulk, as these house of worships did in CPA, and they get a better quality, a lot of times a better quality product, and they get at a lower price. But the other thing that Amy is telling us, because they don't have a purchasing office, CPA ends up being their vendor that helps them to get what they want and put their values into place. And then the other side of it, I think of farmers in particular, they have a purchasing co-op that helps them buy their seed and products to help them to produce their food or their chickens or eggs or whatever they're producing. And then they'll have a marketing co-op to help them to sell that product, because the farmer cannot wear all of those hats. And that's why farming is so risky of a business, because you have all of this work you have to do. So they've come up together and they've got purchasing co-ops to help them in those businesses. And one of the things I like about CPA, I bought my copier machine through CPA. And what I liked about it, they had created a contract that was in my benefit, but the company didn't give me that contract at first. They gave me their normal contract, and I went down. I must have had 8 things. I'm going, no, this is not good. But let's look at this. Oh, he said, I said, well, look, I've given you the wrong contract. And when he gave me the contract that CPA had worked out, all of those 8 things had already been worked out. And it was kind of like I had talked to them first, which I had not. Other people, it's sort of like, what's the contract that's best for the member, not what's best necessarily for that supplier. It's not bad for them, but it don't give them all of the goodies. So, so the farmer will purchase stuff, then they'll use that stuff to produce whatever they're going to produce, and then they'll have a marketing co-op to help them to sell it. And Ocean Spray is a group that a lot of people know that don't know. Organic Valley. There's a lot of purchasing. Cabot Creamery is one, and Cabot Cheese a lot of people know about. So those are owned and controlled by the farmers, 900 farmers, 90,000 farmers. A lot of farmers come together and they work in this, and they'll send their milk or their cranberries to their own purchasing co-op, producing co-op that makes the cranberry juice or gives us our cheese or butter and so forth. Okay, so that's a quick history of the different types. And CPA is a purchasing cooperative.
That's right.
Okay. And that's the reason I wanted to get at, to give people an idea of what kind of co-op you are and why. And all of the different benefits is phenomenal. And you've been able to so did you know about co-ops before you took on this job?
Not really. I mean, I'm a member of REI,
Okay, I'll be right back and we'll talk about that. We got to go to a second break. We'll be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM
Welcome back, everybody. The National Cooperative Bank is a sponsor. They've sponsored us for the 5.5 years we've been on air. And NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. And it's amazing how a bank, who most banks will look at what kind of collateral do you have? Because the only thing the banks are really concerned about, well, they're concerned about three things: getting their money back, one, getting their money back, two, and getting their money back, three. And so they normally will loan money to people that already have assets, so that if the loan fails, they can go get their money back. Well, NCB will loan money to folks in low-income communities that may not have this collateral, which normally don't, for all the reasons that Amy and I have been talking about. The women head of households is $7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I was just so taken aback because the average income of, I don't have these numbers, so I should not say, but in sort of kind of sense of black families was $2,500, of Latino families of $3,000, and of white families it was in the thousands, hundred thousands of dollars, the average net worth. And so it's like, I'll get these numbers so I can have them at my fingertip. But it's so out of proportion in the 07, 08 that a lot of minority families in low-income communities that had built up wealth was mainly in their homes. And that was wiped out. So blacks lost a lot of wealth during that downturn, and that's what happens too often. They can't build up the wealth, and then when something goes bad, then we lose the wealth. So your organization and other co-ops, and the reason I have become to love co-ops is the only way I know that we can build up wealth by coming together solidly, solidarily, build up wealth, and then use that wealth and decide how to use it to help the community. And you've so explained it so well. I hope Felipe is happy, and I know Paul Hazen was also one of the first founders, and he's been on the show.
Very influential in getting CPA to become a cooperative, actually.
I can see that with Paul. Paul is so unassuming. He's so quiet. He's so powerful. He's amazing.
Well, and as I mentioned, Vernon, we're looking for people to join our team.
Are you? So tell us a little bit about that for anybody out there that might be looking for an opportunity. And they maybe already have a job, but you want to go to a company in an organization that's really trying to help the community and people with those four social goals.
So as we look toward the future, we look at both strengthening and expanding our DC Metro region co-op, along with expanding to different regions in the United States. So we're really looking to hear from people. You know, if you identify with some of these sentiments and statements, you know, that you have created or played a critical role in growing an organization from a startup or from small to really impactful. If you have any kind of technical, business, consulting mindset, or you have expertise in an area, you know, that would make it really beneficial to our members. I think I started to talk about earlier, our current program areas are waste hauling, janitorial services, security, solar, electricity, copiers. Thank you, Vernon, for purchasing your copier through CPA. Facilities maintenance.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
And HVAC. And so we're looking for people, if you have expertise in some of these areas, you know, we'd like to hear from you. If you believe in this work, in the co-op movement and democracy, small d democracy, as a vehicle to build power and make significant change, we'd like to hear from you. We, you know, have a couple of different opportunities. One that is called an entrepreneur in residence. A lot of people come to the co-op as a consultant or a contractor, and then, you know, they're able to see if this is the right fit for them, if they can operate in the sort of flexible, remote, agile team that we are, and before being brought on as a full-time director. So we're actually looking for about 3 or 4 people for these entrepreneurs in residence positions, part-time work at first that could lead to a full-time position. And really, we can't create the job description until we meet you. It's exciting that you would actually tell us and bring your natural gifts and talents to this work and tell us how you think we could expand our co-op.
Is in those areas you're already working on or in other areas?
It could be in the areas we currently work if they want to help us think about how to innovate and be more creative in one of those program areas, but it could also be one that we haven't listed.
Well, the other thing I've heard Paul and Felipe talk about is you sort of got started in D.C. and in the metropolitan area, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And now you want to go out nationally.
Yes.
And so would you be looking for somebody to help spread this out to particular other cities, maybe, to do the same kind of things?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are hoping What we're thinking about is we need a few years to incubate a new co-op, right? We need someone on the ground that's building relationships and connecting people and really planting the seeds of the principles. And then, we want to plant those seeds in a couple of different regions. And then, obviously there's business modeling that needs to take place because every region will be different. We don't expect that we can just replicate the DC area co-op. We think that each region is going to struggle with different pain points, and we'd like to teach, new entrepreneurs how they can respond to those distinct and individual needs.
Okay. So you just sort of outlined, there's plenty of opportunity to grow horizontally, vertically, sideways, upside down, everything you can grow. And so if there's anybody out there that would want to look at or talk to, would it be you, Amy, in the organization that they would talk to?
Sure.
So
yeah, and they can actually, we have on our website, which is www.cpa.coop. We have another video webinar that's coming up to explain more about CPA and also the career opportunities with us. And the next one is actually on May 30th at noon, and you can RSVP on our website.
Okay, so one way is going to the website, CPA.coop, CPA being Community Purchasing Alliance .coop, CPA.coop. And where would they go once they come to CPA? I just went on at our offerings, our community about, blog, news and press, join us.
You would click on careers.
I don't see careers. So
there's also a banner at the top of the page that says CPA Co-op is hiring. Do you see that?
Nope. Nope. Okay, I think we'll find that.
Okay.
So it's got our offering, our community, and about. But you can go to CPA.coop to get more about understanding of CPA. And if that banner isn't there, I assume it's going to be there soon.
And they can also email me. My email address is amy@cpa.coop.
Okay. So you can go to amy@cpa.coop and send her information.
It looks like Coop. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I was so engrossed in your story about CPA and your story and looking at the people here, the leadership team, the board of directors, and the advisors. That's a nice group. I've had a lot of these people on the show here. So what are you doing now in your job? It sounds like you are. Well, what is your job as director in CPA?
Sure. So we are a leadership team that is responsible for the operations of our DC area co-op. And so all of our directors sort of own one program area that they are in charge of, again, growing and innovating and responsible for the vendor relationships and also member relationships that participate in those program areas. And so right now I'm focusing on waste hauling, and the waste industry has changed so significantly, even in the last, 6 to 9 months. And part of it is because China and India are no longer accepting our plastic and some of our recyclables. And so it's kind of sent the recycling market into chaos. And that U.S. companies, the U.S. isn't exactly prepared right now to handle that overflow of recyclables. And so I'm learning a lot about the cost of waste hauling. I feel really strongly about what happens to trash, in part because where I grew up in rural Ohio, down my favorite country road that I used to ride down with the windows down and smelling like freshly cut grass and cornfields as far as the eye could see, there is now a landfill that is just this trash mountain disrupting that rural country road. And, we were powerless to stop that from happening. And it wasn't even trash coming from Ohio. It was coming in from New York City. And I think a lot about where our trash ends up and who ends up near it. And so this is an area that I'm, really interested both in helping institutions think more about their waste reduction, composting, and also recycling.
Well, you're interested in where trash ends up and who ends up near the trash. Can you talk a little bit more about who ends up near the trash?
Sure. So, I mean, to put it bluntly, it's usually in poor communities and communities of color. And we see this when, I was working on coal ash, which is a byproduct of coal-producing power plants. And there's been a lot of concern about coal ash that is simply dumped, in these ponds across our region. And the conversation around how to remove it safely, how to cap it in place, if it's going to be trucked out, if it's going to be on trains, if it's going to be on boats, how are you going to move it? But really the other question is, where are you moving it to? And a lot of times we see that it's being moved to rural communities from, larger cities, and it's people of color and it's lower income communities that this coal ash is being moved to. So that's something of deep interest to me, is helping people think about where their waste ends up, because it's frankly kind of scary to think about. I don't know if you saw the movie WALL-E, Vernon, but that's one of my nightmares, is that we're just going to, become a plastic trash planet, like the plastic island that's floating the size of Texas in our ocean. I think a lot about that.
W-A-L-L-E-Y, WALL-E?
WALL-E was W-A-L-L-E.
Okay.
It was an animated kids movie.
Okay. No, I didn't
and it's
see
essentially
it.
about how people ruin the planet and have to move to space while they leave robots on Earth to clean up the plastic and the trash while they're gone.
Well, we'll think about that as we take our final break. Okay.
Okay.
And it's ugly. Okay, we'll be right back.
Thanks.
DC's News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Information is power, and that's why WOL is a great partner for this show. But it isn't information that you get to power. And Amy Abbott, who was our guest today, talked about power early on. It is when you get the information and put it into action. You got to get the action in order to get the power out of the information, get information out of the knowledge. And co-op's fifth principle is knowledge information, and perhaps knowledge information and power, knowledge information training. That a co-op is about informing and training the members, the vendors, and the whole community about the issues. And what issue we were talking about was waste, what happens to the waste and who ends up with it. And you said, to be honest, it ends up in poor communities and communities of people of color, and that is absolutely right. I've got some strong feelings about that too, Amy. You look at the coal ash, and they were talking about this in North Carolina, Duke
right.
Energy as an example. And people of color, they can't fight it because they don't have power. They're not together. They're not organized. So they don't have power to fight it. And so stuff gets dumped in their community. And then you start seeing cancer and all of these lung diseases and stuff happening to their children, and particularly children and older folk. And they don't seem to know what causes it until they find out it's the coal ash that's in the water. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you look at the whole quality of life issues and people dying before their time. Okay. So not only could they not get on that rolling stair step, that sidewalk you were talking about, but they die earlier and they just don't have any opportunities. And it's like they really got thrown into the deep water. Yeah. Okay. We can go back to that. I was thinking about this during the break, and it's an awful view.
And Vernon, I wondered if I could take a minute to talk about the power that you were just talking about.
Sure.
And, in our view, power is the ability to make change. it's the ability to act. And, it comes in these two forms of organized people and organized money. And something that happened in December really highlighted for me the power of the co-op. And it happened when one member of CPA sent a quick note to my team member, Boris, who leads our electricity work. And the member said, hey, our electricity bill has just shot through the roof. And, we signed this fixed-rate contract. What's going on? And so, as my colleague looked at this bill, he asked other members of the co-op who were on the same, provider, the same supplier, to send them their bills. And so, Boris analyzed around 500 bills and realized that it was not just this one school, that it actually affected all 31 CPA members who had signed a contract with the supplier. And they were passing through more of a charge than they should have been. And the only reason we knew this was because we had so many members who trusted us, who were part of this co-op, that we unearthed this practice. And we were actually able to go straight to the decision makers at the supplier and negotiate with them directly. And in the end, we got $45,000 of reimbursement for our members for the overbilling that they experienced. And this is something that none of them would have done, could have done on their own. And it was only through the membership in the co-op being able to pool their resources, we were able to consult with lawyers, that they were able to recoup and recover some of their money that they had been overbilled. So it just was a really strong example to me of the purpose and the power that we have collectively that we would not have on our own.
Well, I have found that sometimes the bigger the business, the more they would do things. I started to say unscrupulously, but I just won't go that far with it, but that's what I feel. But they will charge things that they should not be charging. And then for an individual consumer to get them to change is almost impossible.
That's right.
And I've been there, so that's what I'm talking about. Now, I'm a property manager in my day job, so I manage buildings, communities, and it's not unusual for the water bill, the electric bill, the gas bill to be higher than what it ought to be. And to get them to change their mind on it, you have to go through a lot of, and I'm just sitting here thinking, maybe it'd be great if we had all of our members be a part of CPA. So as a group, we could go and negotiate with them, because individually, even when I'm representing 14 communities, to have the power to fight them when they overcharge. And they will overcharge. There's no question. Okay. So we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to talk more about this growth thing.
Yes.
So do you have any particular areas that CPA said we want to grow in? I'm talking about new areas.
Yeah. New areas or new regions? New program areas?
Let's talk about it all.
Okay. Well,
just to let you know, I was talking about new program offerings, but new areas in terms of geography, that's fine, nationally or internationally. Okay.
So we are often presented, again, Vernon, I mentioned that our program areas come about from listening to our members. They tell us what they're struggling with, and then we try to, really dive into that area to help them. And so we need to grow, we need to add capacity, because right now our members have told us there are areas that they want to invest in and grow, and we don't have the staff to do it. And so some of those areas, we want to develop an HVAC program. We've done some work in HVAC. We'd like to do more. Same thing with facilities maintenance. That's a huge pain point for our, houses of worship that are 50, 60, 100 years old, and caring for those buildings. We also know real estate and repurposing, some of the houses of worship, and them thinking about their next, 50 years and what they want to be doing in the community, and so how to use that space. Also accounting and finance, which is a huge piece for our charter schools that are members, and, thinking about maybe developing something around that. So those are, just a few areas that we would like to dive into with the right people.
So HVAC, for people out there that don't know, is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yes, thank you.
And that is huge. And I'm in property management is huge, because you're either heating up air or are you cooling down air? There's very few times in a year, particularly here in the D.C. area, where you're not doing one of those two things.
That's right.
So the more air space you have in a church, in a school, the more air you have to heat up or cool down. And that can get to be very expensive, and those things break. Okay.
Oh, yes.
They break.
And then when they break, the question is whose fault is it that they're broken? And what kind of maintenance contract do you have? And who was your building engineer? Who was the architect? Was it the supplier, the vendor that actually installed the unit? Most places can't afford to do a complete replacement, so they're cobbling together systems, right? So it's a very complex and difficult piece of an expensive puzzle for our members.
So most of the members do not have enough savings, and we call it replacement reserves, to replace things when they mess up. I mean, it could be there's no fault except that it wore out.
Right.
When it wears out after 20, 30, 40 years, then it's a big ticket item. And how do you replace this big ticket item? And so I've known organizations, nonprofits particularly, that, put bubble gum and coat hangers to try to keep it going. And it works for a while. It's amazing. It works. But who do you have that can even get it to work? And it breaks down too often. So, it's a major, 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 major issue. And it takes somebody with knowledge to understand HVAC systems and engineering and so forth to create preventive maintenance and to fix it when they break.
And to help these organizations and, we want them to be able to focus on their mission of educating, children, of, serving the community with all of the social programs that they offer. We don't want them to have to worry about their facilities and think of it as a huge burden. CPA would like to help lift that burden. When I was working in nonprofit, one of my first days at my new job at this facility, there was a sewage explosion. There was just raw sewage coming into the basement through our laundry machine. And I think about myself now, and I wish that I had known about CPA. There was a CPA that could have helped me figure out, okay, who's the right plumber? Who can I call? Who can I trust? How do I clean up this raw sewage and prevent this from happening again? So we would like to be that for people.
That's awesome. That's so helpful because that's big. And also these co-op housing. I want to give a shout out to Anita Bonds, Council Member Anita Bonds, for creating a limited equity housing cooperative. It's a limited equity cooperative task force to look at it. And this preventive maintenance and taking care of the facility is a big, big issue, particularly for people that don't have a lot of money, low-income communities. And how do you do it and do it responsibly so that they can have good housing or good schools or good houses of worship and do the things that they need to do, raise a family, get educated, and figure out what their values are and go ahead and implement those values. You do good work, lady.
Thank you, Vernon.
I am so glad that you came on the show this morning to talk about you and your history and what you all are doing. In the last minute, what would you like to leave people with?
I would like to tell you that Randall Memorial United Methodist Church in D.C. was able to get their entire roof replaced at no cost to the church, and were able to put solar panels on their roof, and will get yearly and monthly savings from those solar panels because of working with CPA. And we're so grateful to them and all of the good that they do in their neighborhood. And so that's why we're doing this work.
So if you want to reduce your costs and have more benefits, please look up CPA, www.cpa.cooperative. And Amy, thank you so very, very much. And everybody out there, please have a wonderful week and live cooperatively. Thank you.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.